Well, thanks for coming. It's really crappy outside, so I appreciate it. It's kind of a big deal. The other thing I want to do is I want to thank CCAD because I've been hanging around here since I was 10. That's crazy. So I started going to Saturday school when I was 10, and then I went to school here, and it just taught me so much. I mean, I think about how I was shaped and molded by people like Rick Petrie, and it made me who I am. When I think about where the impact has been in my life, it's my parents and this place. So for today, I thought I would talk about kind of a career span, because I've been doing this for a while, in 3 parts. And the first part is what it's like to be creative and own a business, because that sounds a little different. And then being a woman and running a business, because that's a real thing. And then the best stuff that we've made. And I say we, but it's kind of my own personal opinion of what I think the best stuff is. So let's get into being creative and owning a business. So it's opposite sides of your brain, right? So if you're a really creative person, then the business stuff may not come that easy. And for me, it really didn't. And even now I make sure I'm surrounded with people that are pretty good about certain business things. So the first 5 years, I started thinking, well, you probably want to know what was that like, because that was a really long time ago. And what was I thinking, what was I feeling? So I started this business, and I had this huge fear of failure. And I knew for a fact that I was an underdog. And I think it's really important when you think of where Ologie is today, that you don't think it was always a big, grand vision, because you can look from a distance and say, oh, that looks like a really successful place, and it is, but it started really tiny, and I literally started my business because I didn't want to show my portfolio. I didn't want to go on an interview. So the thing is like, that was my little quirky weakness, and it turned into a good thing. And so kind of trust your own journey. And so those first 5 years, especially the first couple, I was totally posing, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing good design work, right? But you need to see this. This is my accounting. So I won't stay here too long because it's embarrassing, but this is so bad. And I got in a lot of trouble for this. Jeff Fisher, I bet you love this, right? It's horrible, isn't it? Right, yeah, I kept track of when things were paid. But I got in trouble with this kind of accounting, so it got better after a while. My first office was at the Jefferson Center, and it's right down the street. So I really appreciate Don Vickers, who ran the Jefferson Center. It's an incubator for nonprofits. I'm pretty sure he knew I wasn't making money, so I qualified. So this is 61 Jefferson Avenue. I couldn't find a high-res photo, but then at that time, and we were there for 3 years, you had to turn the air conditioning off to make a copy, to make a black and white copy. You would blow a fuse. So, but it was $145 a month. So heat included. So it worked out great. And I was doing work for nonprofits all over the block. And it influenced me greatly. What I do know about being there, those first 3 years and even longer, is that the time you invest is absolutely the skill you develop. And I started to learn that here too, all of the hours spent working on things to get better. And that whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing is true. It is really true. There's no shortcuts. I have never seen anybody get really, really good at something and shortcut their way around it. It just takes hours and hours. One thing when we talk about the first 5 years, I think it's important that you also know that there's things you do just to kind of hang on when things aren't really stable. And I was really busy early days, and so I remember I was a horrible driver, and I would run around, race around, turn corners. I ran that stop sign, and I got in a car wreck, and it was my fault. So I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and the first week was on me. I was in there with the wreck, but then the second week they kind of messed up, and it kept me in the hospital for another week. And when I got back to the office, and I only had like 2 or 3 people, we billed $5,000 that month. because I wasn't there, right? I wasn't doing the work. It was super scary. And I just sat there and I'm like, how am I going to cover payroll? It was super stressful. So back then, you get your insurance check in the mail for the hospital stay. And, the insurance is reimbursing you. And I was supposed to send that to Riverside. And I didn't. I cashed the check and I covered payroll. So those are the kinds of things you do just to hang on. And I don't know that Riverside knows that they were kind of an early investor. But they were, and they stopped bugging me after a while, and it's all good. Then when you get to 10 years, a decade, you kind of think, hey, yeah, I've survived for a bit, this is good. But the things I was thinking at that point was, oh man, you have to stay scrappy, and you still have to outwork everybody, because we were still really small, and I wanted to be significant. I looked at the Business First Top 25 lists, and I looked at the Addy books and who was in those, and CSCA, and that meant something to me, and I wanted to be there. I looked at the How magazines in print and CA, and I wanted to be in those books. So this was the time where I was just kind of going for it. And what I found is that when you delegate, you grow. Because those first 5-8 years, I wasn't growing that much. I was just hanging on, probably suffocating people out as well. But what I did know is I didn't have the personal discipline to delegate. I just didn't. So what I had to do was basically have a baby to kind of go home at a normal time. And I had to get home to that thing, right? And he's pretty cute. So, it became important to me. And he also hung out with me at work sometimes, so that was really different. That's him hanging on my leg. But so here's what's cool. By the time he was 2, the business doubled, right? So it was a hard way to learn that lesson. It takes me forever to learn things. But why? Because I let go and I let other people grow. And I think that's an important lesson. Something else I think is important is leaning into what gives you energy. So we started to have, more employees and things like that. And people, during professional development, I want to learn this, I want to learn that. I'm not that good at this one thing. And I'm really good at this, but not that. I'm like, who cares? Why would you want to be good at that? And the way I think about it is if you try to be good at everything and you're not nurturing the thing you're really talented at, you just become mediocre. And whenever I talk to people, like, why do you want to be mediocre? And then the other thing I think about is that if you're really good at one thing, it is the power of the universe. You're going to be really bad at other things. That's just how it works. So I try to get people to lean into what gives them energy and stop trying to be everything, because you're never going to be everything. The next phase is really into our 20s, right? We're 20-something now. And you'd think that we had kind of settled in and kind of riding smooth, but that's not really what happened. We had extreme change in our 20s, and it was a lot of reinvention, and here's why. I feel like you can mess things up on the inside, and you kind of know you're your own worst enemy a lot of times, and you can fix that, but I always say, you can't control outside forces, you can't control what you can't control, and that stuff's going to happen, and it becomes, your job to pivot, to lead, and to make a decision to change. And people don't like change, but you have to push it, you have to push through. And so this is what happened in 2008. 80% of our business was financial services. Well, what happened in 2008, right? So that sucked. And we had an office in Brooklyn for our financial services clients, and that was really cool, and we shut that down. And then we were starting to do some education work in 2008. So we made a huge shift, and it took us a while, and we moved towards education. We loved it. We naturally loved it. And the financial services work wasn't there, so it kind of didn't matter. So now, within this past year, we're about 75% education and then 25% purpose-driven, which are things like, museums and other nonprofits, which have come to us naturally. And I think the other thing I really want to talk about is this idea of losing people. So when you have a business and you've had it for 20 some years, you start to realize that there's people in the business that you think, man, I could never live without them, right? And maybe they've been there 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 17 years for some people at Ologie. And then, when you lose them, it's really tough. And you think, oh, what's going to happen now? I really relied on that person. But over time, I've realized that we're fine. New people come in, new energy, new blood comes in. And my whole thing is to keep an open heart and to stay really grateful and appreciate the time that they were there, and to really think about the fact that all of those people that worked at Ologie before, now have built and grown this company with me. And so I'm just grateful. And this is great. This is such great timing. I was putting this presentation together, and I was sitting there talking to Renee. We were working on the design of this presentation. And I said, I don't know what kind of visual I want to put with this slide. Maybe there's no visual for this slide. And then this email popped up. And this is from Danielle. She went to CCAD, and I hired her 8 years ago. And I think I even worked with her when she was a senior. And she just emailed me to say, it's been about a year since she's worked at Ologie, and to say thank you. And I get this all the time. And so I think that's what helps me just stay grateful. So now we're in our third decade. We just got through 30 years pretty quickly. But we are in our third decade, and that's all I can say. It's like it is kind of a blur. Like I can't believe it, but I don't know what else I would do, so I'm just going to keep doing this. And so the question is kind of like, what are we thinking about now? What's on our minds now? And honestly, it's staying relevant. So I'm always thinking 6 months out. I always say that. I'm thinking 6 months out constantly. I'm not really thinking about today. I'm connecting the dots about what's going to happen in the future. And historically, we've been the ones kind of scraping and clawing, and now we've got some people nipping at our heels, and it's like, that's annoying. But, so it's no time for us to be complacent. And so I actually feel even a more sense of urgency to stay relevant. And then another thing that I think happens over time is that you come to terms with what the truth is about your business. And here's what I know about this business is that it's not scalable. So I would say I learned that in the last couple years, because what we make is custom made. So every time we get to about 80 people, we start to break. And we've done this 3 or 4 times. Like, why do we keep doing this? And we're real good at about 65 or 70. After that, we start losing control of things. Like, you want only great stuff to go out the door. Everything we're doing has to be perfect and wonderful. So I used to feel a lot of pressure to grow, but I don't anymore. I just want to do great work, and I've always wanted that, but I don't feel pressure to do great work and be huge. I feel like you can still be really significant. And then we get to being a woman and running a business, and I thought this was really important to cover because I've been dealing with just this fact since 1987, and things have changed a lot in that time frame. So people say, does a company feel different when it's run by a woman? And the answer is, yeah, it really does. And people tell me that it feels different. I don't ask them, but women and men tell me it feels very different to have leadership at the top that are women, and they've told me what they mean by that. I'm like, well, what's different? Because I don't see gender, frankly. I just don't. So I'm like, well, how is it different? And one of the main things they talk about is just empathy. So the tone of a place, it does ripple down. It comes from the top. And I do think that even in these kinds of businesses, emotional intelligence is one of the biggest traits people have in our building. And empathy is a big part of that. And so I think that we feel more and we care more, and people notice it and we allow it. So there's some drama that goes on in our building, and it's because people are in it, like emotionally in it. The other thing is flexibility. So things are never going to get more simple. Our lives are really, really complicated, and they're just going to keep getting more and more complicated. And I don't think anyone has a better perspective on that than a woman who, a lot of times, maybe that, I think it's shifting and changing now, but you kind of go home and do another full-time job. And there's so many things going on now, so many obligations, and the kind of parenting thing, and what a big space that takes up in your life, and you need the time to do it. And so I think that our environment is really flexible, and that's intentional and on purpose. And the last one is that we're just naturally inclusive. We always have been. I was always on the outside looking in, in the early days. I used to dress up in really stupid suits just to try to, pull it off. And I got rejected a lot. And so I just remember kind of going to where the open doors were. I didn't really think about the ones that were shutting in my face. I kind of ignored it. But I can't even imagine not being 100% inclusive. Just based on our values, we just would never be anything different. It's very organic and natural for us. So I took a look, right? So I said, well, if this is how I feel, and I feel really strongly about this, what if I measured it in our own company? What would that be like? So kind of like moment of truth for me. And so we have 40 females and 33 males. And we're virtually equal kind of by pay. So females get an extra $4,000 average, but that's really good. So I was proud of that. And then it's very even on leadership positions inside of our company as well. And it wasn't something that we're doing the math every day. It's just we're probably just doing the right thing. A long time ago, I remember I went to a Laurie Anderson concert. I don't know if anybody remembers her, but she had this song, and it was all about how women got paid 64 cents on the dollar. And so now it's 80 cents. And I think about the fact that 25, 30 years have gone by, and we've moved the needles by 16 cents. It's really shitty. So we have work to do, and I think that there's a lot of women-owned companies coming up, and I think there's a lot of very aware men, and I think it's going to change. I mean, I feel better about it. The conversation is there, so I feel good about that. And I think the other thing that I feel really strongly about is the power of the work that we do and the impact that it can have. So I do think a lot of our giving back as a company is because of our roots at the Jefferson Center and what I was exposed to in that time frame. So when I think about the power of the work we do, we make people stop and think, we change their minds, we move people to do things. And one of the things I'm really proud of is that our fingerprints, Ologie's fingerprints, are all over Columbus. We've worked for countless nonprofits forever. And so I looked at that too, because I know we measure this. I just hadn't looked at it in a long time. And so we do a lot of in-kind work. We've done this over the years in cash donations, but it's like over $15 million. It's crazy. It's just a crazy number. But if you keep doing it, it adds up. And when stuff adds up like that, it's just power. So we've been doing things that way. When people call and ask, we're like, yeah, we'll do that for you. We decided to do something different this past year, and I'm really proud of it. So when you do something new, after you've been around for a while and you can't imagine not doing it again, then you've really landed on something cool. So Rachel, who's a strategist at Ologie, she came to me and she goes, hey, I've got this idea. I want to shut down the company for a day. And then she, hear me out, and she wanted us to pick 2 nonprofits and completely rebrand them in a day. So everybody just stopped what they were doing. We huddled, and it was chaos and it was crazy, but we did it, and it was super cool. So this is what that kind of looked like. We had we had people everywhere. The people from the nonprofits were with us all day long, so they iterated with us in real time. And I think everyone's excited about the big reveal, but they were with us, and I think it made everything work out great. So what we wound up doing is a new brand for Roy G. Biv. they're moving to Franklinton, and I don't know when, but soon, and they needed this. They needed a new identity for this new space they were going to be in. And then we did this new brand for Chris, and it's a nonprofit that supports refugee children. And just learning about this organization, it's incredible, and it was really important work. We actually spun up a website in a day. Now, we were supposed to all leave at 5 or 6 o'clock, and there were some people that stayed, and I felt bad about it. But they wanted to, and it was just, and so they walked away with these brands, and I feel so great about that, and we're gonna do it again this year. So when I talk about all of that stuff, it's because I keep choosing meaning over money. And I do have a tendency to make decisions that favor meaning, and I do think that the money follows. And I'll just always be like that. It probably means I won't be huge and super, super wealthy, but I get to live with myself every day, and it's a lot more fun. And then the last kind of bit of advice is this idea of being a truth teller. Just being in a building full of creative people and just people in general over the years, I think people think of the truth as confrontational. And it's not. It's like, so what I've found is that people just want the truth. That's all they care about. They just want honesty. And when you're in a creative business, you're shaping and molding work. So how can you not tell the truth? And when you don't, stuff just gets weird over time. And eventually work has to go to the client, and someone's feelings are going to get hurt. So we can't really protect people in the process. But the thing I always think about is be honest and be kind. And when you do that, everybody grows. It's not confrontational, and it makes for a better environment. And so that's one of the things I talk about a lot, is just be a truth teller. Just tell the truth. And be nice at the same time. It works, I promise. So now we get to the best stuff that we've made. And it is all in the work. And so when I think about how we approach work, it's also, not completely logical. So there's a couple of business quotes that I can't stand. And one of them is, don't let perfection get in the way of progress. And I do that all the time. And I think that's great, because I don't care about that. I always go for perfect, and I get really pissed off when stuff goes out the door and it's not perfect. It has to be our version of perfect, but we're going to keep doing it. And so that's a dumb one. And then the other one is the 80-20 rule. I hate this one too. So if, it's this whole business thing, like get to 80% and then just keep going and don't get caught up. And I'm like, no, I'm getting caught up. I'm totally getting caught up because I'm super obsessed with the last 20%. It's just like, I don't know how to do great work any other way. So these are projects, I picked the ones we completely overinvested in. And a lot of them, I remember there was a CCAD student, and he was just special. His name was Dan McMahon. He's a photographer in New York now. But when he got there, I just felt something really special about him, and he didn't know the design program. And I let him work on a project that's in here the whole summer. I mean, it's ridiculous, so that he could learn the program and do some really cool work. So, who cares? So the first one is for Kenyon College. And it's just a beautiful place. And their assignment to us was to create a book for donors that gave more than $50,000. So that's a lot of money, and they needed to give them something really nice. They're thinking coffee table book. And I didn't want to be safe. And what I've noticed is that when you only present 2 or 3 options, you're safe, because you are worried, like what if they don't like 1 or 2 or 3? It just puts you in this safe zone. So we started doing things what we call wide and shallow. And we do it because it allows us to take risks. Because if we take a giant risk on 3 or 4 things, who cares? They have 3 or 4 things that they can lean into, and if they want to choose that one. So that's what we did with Kenyon. We created 8 concepts, and wide and shallow means you don't have to do that much, just tell them what the idea is. And so the first idea was, why don't you do a book that is a collection of your very best writing? Because Kenyon is known for creating great authors. The second one was, what about Kenyon's history? This was a campaign that was closing, and it was historical. Stories of our impact beyond campus. And then maybe a book called Dualities, that is stories that are equal parts, equal images and words. And then we had one idea that was about the ripple effect of Kenyon's graduates out in the world. So you can tell some of these are kind of safe. Yeah, okay, that's great. And then one was an entire book dedicated to their song, their college song. And so it's kind of broken down. And this would be a big book. That would have been kind of fun. And then another one was just a collection of 6 books, all kind of embodying a single word, each one. And then the last one, which was the last one we presented because I was kind of afraid to, was called Kenyon Unwritten. And there's not a single word in the book. It's all images, all photos from a place that's known for its written word. And they saw that and they said, yeah, that's it. So every once in a while, you're going to get it, but you've got to put enough stuff out there that their mind is open and they'll be, yeah, that's amazing. That would be a good one. So this is what we did. We went to campus and we shot for a week. And we just found all these things in their archives. It's a pretty amazing place. We found weird things, and old uniforms, cute little hats. And we made this book, and it's really beautiful. So it's called Kenyon Unwritten. And what's great about it is that it's really pure. So my biggest fear with this project is that they would start dropping words in. We'll just put that there and just put that there. And they didn't do that, and I was really impressed by that. I just, until it went on the press, I just thought for sure that they were going to kill the concept and not even know they were doing it. And they didn't. So these are just snapshots of that pretty book. And then it was packaged in what I kept calling a bento box. And it was all kind of neatly arranged with really nice keepsakes around it. And so for me, it's always worth it to keep generating ideas. And in our office, we just call it, let's go wide and shallow. Let's take some risks here. There could be something really cool with this project. The next one is real estate. So about 10 years ago, downtown living was getting kind of hot, and things were coming online. And one of them was 60 Spring and the Jeffrey, and our job was to position 2 real estate projects right around the same time they were being developed to attract the right people, and they were different audiences for each one. So the first one was 60 Spring, and these were for people that, it was really downtown, next to office buildings, no dry cleaner, no grocery store. They would really have to embrace downtown living, and they were condos, so they'd be slightly older people that could take on a mortgage. So this would not be for the faint of heart. This is a mindset. And we created kind of a reinvention of or reinterpretation of the elements of downtown living. And so I just loved these. So the first one is concrete is comforting. So we're just kind of redefining what these elements will be that are around, and would they relate to this? If they would relate to this, then they might want to be there. So street cleaners are domestic help, and traffic is community. So we're taking all these things that could be spun out as a negative and saying, no, if you're into this, you're going to love this. Manhole covers are art. And buildings are family, right? So you're in this, if you're not used to it, there's all these buildings around, they're kind of there every time you get home. Sidewalks are trails, and window washers are angels, and pigeons are friends. So not only do I think that it's just a good concept, I just love the concept. This is the project that Dan McMahon worked on, and he worked right behind the massive color copier in our office, and to get all of these textures, he kept jamming things through the copier, and he broke it many, many times. So when I see that stuff, I think about the broken copier. But they became construction postings, they became brochures, and so it happened. They did it, and it was super successful. And the next project for them was the Jeffrey. So this was the original headquarters for the Jeffrey Company, and it's an Italian village. And this was not, there was no fox in the snow down there at this time. It was pretty edgy. And so these were more affordable apartments for a younger audience. And we had to get people excited about coming down to this area and living. There wasn't much around there. So before construction ever started, we staged a bunch of young people, and they're not really models. I think we just found them, literally to take over the Jeffrey. So it had been empty for years. And I think that was the sort of CEO's office. So there was some really cool stuff in there still. But the entire positioning of this project was about kids taking over and being, real rebels. And we staged the different rooms with props. That's how bad the paint was. It was in the summertime, and it was 100 degrees in there. So it was kind of a miserable shoot, but really fun because we knew we were doing something cool. So to pull this off, we had to do the shoot, and then we had to wait a year, so no instant gratification. Then the construction had to happen, and then we could make the marketing materials. So we actually did the shoot a year early, but it was worth it. It's such a pretty piece. This is one of the pieces that came out of it. And it just feels like young, energetic kids doing slightly off and edgy things. A little sketchy, which is good. The next project is Coda, and it's a total rebrand for them. This was a couple years ago. And it's close to me because I used to ride the bus, and my mom was always late picking me up from school, and she would ride behind the bus because I was going up to OSU to take classes my senior year in high school, and the bus driver would stop for me, not at the stop, but along the street so that I could get on the bus. I was horrified, but he knew me, he knew my mom, and he got me to campus. So our job was to help them, get the levy vote that was coming up in, I think, a year or two out. And the last levy passed by like 2 points, so it was super tight. They were really worried about it. So the first thing that we did was get to know the people at Coda. And we went in and we took their portraits. I'm like, who are these people? Beyond the drivers, like there's this whole group of people that make stuff happen every day. And they loved that we were featuring them. It meant so much to them. And when we would kind of go downtown and visit, there's this big process. You have to sign in, you have to get a card, you have to give them your ID, and the receptionist was not very friendly with us. But then when we took her picture, and it was beautiful, and we used her in all the materials, like she felt valued, and her whole demeanor changed. And that kind of happened throughout the whole organization. This is a spot that we did, and the thing that I think is important is that we started celebrating the relationship between drivers and passengers.
I'm a morning person. I just like getting up, getting going.
I've been riding probably 40-some years.
I love meeting all the different types of people. They say, good morning, how's your day going? I like my passengers.
When I'm downtown, I either walk or I take the bus everywhere. I don't have to worry because I'm not driving.
Coda's one of the best ways to get to know the city.
So don't waste any more time. Get on. Let's ride.
So I think it changed people's minds about Coda, like how they felt about it. It was more human. So the unintended consequence of this campaign was a morale boost internally. And that's my favorite part of this project, is what it did for the people inside of the organization. And, this whole, I don't really talk about the complete redesign of all their graphics, but it's really sophisticated and really wonderful. And the one thing I think is important to note is that the levy passed by over 30 margin points. So that is supposed to be the thing that really matters, but and it does. But I loved how it changed the people internally. This next project is the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. So sometimes the stuff you're working on is so important. And our job was to change people's minds about adopting out of foster care. And so these kids are older and they're hard to place. And our job was to change people's minds. And that's a tall order. So we created a series of posters with headlines like "I'm not unlovable," just kind of hitting it, just hitting people right in the face of like, I know what you're thinking, and I'm just going to say it out loud. I'm not a troublemaker. We are not twice the burden. When there's siblings, it's even harder. I'm not too old. And some kids literally are in the foster program and age out at 18. And then what? Believe me, 18-year-olds are not adults. I am not just a number. And so we created all of this collateral. I think what's really beautiful here is the front of that brochure. You would always handwrite in how many kids needed to be placed at that moment. So it was in the moment, and you could really talk about it. It was handmade, so it meant more. And this is a spot we did.
I'm not a troublemaker. I am not too old. We're not twice the burden. I am not just a number. I am not unlovable.
Find out more about what children in foster care are really like and help us find them forever homes.
So when I talked earlier about the power of the work that we do, like what if just one child was placed? It's just huge. The next body of work is for the Smithsonian and the Air and Space Museum. And so our job was to motivate people to give. And they're the most popular museum in the country. And, we got the call, would you help us raise this money? And we have a lot of geeks in our office, and they're so psyched about this. So these are pictures that they took when they were on Discovery, running around the museum. And it's just crazy stuff. I mean, this is America, right? This is American history. I don't even know what that is. It's pretty. Okay, thanks, sir. But ultimately, our campaign included a site, a microsite, and the homepage. This is the animation of the homepage. It just went live a couple weeks ago, and it scrolls in reverse. What's really cool about it is it starts to scroll. It sort of tells the story of this little girl looking up. Kind of takes you through the process, and then the sky starts to get darker, and you're literally going into space. So we haven't raised any money yet for them. Well, I mean, probably have, but I think this is going to do well. So this piece also, like the responsiveness, the design is really impressive. And then we did a campaign video, and it's for us. It's all about storytelling. The voiceover is Harrison Ford, so that's kind of cool. He's a friend of theirs, and I know that when he phoned in and did his voiceover, I think there were 12 people in the room. So you guys are really cool. But I think that people in the office felt this huge kind of awesome responsibility to do this justice because it's such a cool thing, and I think that's what this project was about.
It begins with a spark, a passion for air and space. As the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum undergoes a monumental transformation, this place that gives life to a remarkable past will give rise to the people who will make history tomorrow. Join us, and together we'll ignite tomorrow.
So that's just just some of the work. And when I think about the work, I barely did any of this work, right? So my whole job at this point is this an environment where great work can happen? And it sounds simple, but that's really hard to do. And I do feel like that's a big part of my focus, is knocking down any barriers every day, as time goes by, what's keeping our environment from producing really great work. How can I help? And so I just brought some photos of the people in our space, because we have incredible people in our office. And this just reminds me, like, this is Joy. She's a writer, and she needs an office. And a lot of the other writers in our space don't have offices, but she needs one. So I just always make sure that she has one. And then, do we have a lot of space to collaborate? We have 8,000 square feet of cork in our offices, and the point of that is to get the work out of your computer and get it on the wall, because then you can see it at scale and you can see it in context with everything else and as a group. So those three things are really important, and when they're in your computer, you can't do any of those things. And just to collaborate and talk to each other and create an open space. And dogs are, that's such a cliche, but it's kind of true. I think they calm everybody down. There are times when I walk back into this one area of the building and it smells like a pet store. But people, it's important to them. Also, like, places that are comfortable, right? Just so you can hang out. I'm not a huge fan of desks lined up, and I know we have to do that just to get people in the space, but I've tried to create spaces that are kind of cozy and comfortable, and then even quiet spaces where you can get away and be quiet. Get your work done, and I always think, like, I'd like to live there. If things went south at home, I would just, hang out up there for a bit. And then this is the main drag in our office, and it's a fun place, and it's where good stuff happens. It's where we have parties and staff meetings, and it's where people come in and enter, and it's just I don't know, to me that's kind of like the heartbeat of Ologie. So I've been talking about lots of historical things and the work we've done over a long period of time, but we just finished a video that I just want to share, and then I'm done, of what's happened in the last 12 months. And when you look at what's happened in the last 12 months, it's a lot. It's like, I can't believe we did all that. But you do, because you come into work every day and you get stuff done, and clients have deadlines. So here it is. All right, 12 months. That's it. Okay, so I think I've left a couple minutes for questions, if anyone has questions. Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you remain relevant? What did your team do?
To be relevant, well, I feel like first of all, we have some pretty young people in the office, and that helps. But I think we do our homework. We're constantly doing research, real research, quantitative research and qualitative research for our clients, and I think that forces us to learn a lot. And we're also just always consuming information. Yeah.
What advice do you have for those of us who are terrified to show our portfolio?
Right.
From your side as
Yeah.
a business.
Yeah, well, start your own business. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, you could. Well, I mean, so that's an irrational fear, okay? Just put that out there. It's completely irrational. You should do it anyway. And it's going to be fine. I mean, in whatever you choose to do. Whatever you choose to do. But don't just not show your portfolio. Unless you can start your own business, and then I'm going to talk to you about that. Anything else? Yep.
I was really struck by your 2 pie charts of
Mhm.
2008, 2018. And I think, we are at another moment where, you're now 75% higher ed, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of tumultuous change
Right.
within higher ed. So I'm wondering, if you had a crystal ball, what do you think the 2028 pie chart looks like? Do you see
Mhm.
it
I know.
changing?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's a long time, but so we went from financial services to higher ed, and we were kind of naturally going there, and that's where we're putting our energy. And so where you put your energy is where the outcome is. So now, I think higher ed is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, right? But there's a lot of conversation about how much it costs. I think there's going to be a lot of budget constraints on spending money on things like what we do. A lot of the RFPs we're getting, we look for trends. The RFPs we're getting are less about brand and more about campaigns, like make an impact for me right now so that I can see an immediate ROI on this investment. And a lot of our clients that are in higher ed, in the advancement world, move over to museums, other purpose-driven brands, and things like that. So we've started doing a lot of work for other purpose-driven brands, and so you saw that one piece that said purpose-driven. Well, that's kind of our next, is to push into purpose-driven brands, and that doesn't just mean nonprofits. And you think about what's going on, think about for-profit companies that do purpose-driven campaigns, right? So that's where I see us going, and it might be like, half and half, something like that.
How do you
Hi, Graham.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How do you attract good talent? Like, is it based on just the work and kind of culture itself, or like do you ever have struggles like bringing in good talent?
Yes. Yeah. So Columbus, we didn't used to. Columbus is a tight market. So Columbus is doing great. That's the upside. The downside is that there's not enough of us around. There's not enough creative talent around, which was why we did our annual meeting video, and we were just asking people dumb questions in the office, like, where'd you go to school? And half of them went to CCAD. So keep making graduates, right? Because we need them, and this city needs them. It's a problem. And the other thing, and I'll just be honest about it, some of the other companies in town are, I always call it the big black box, the retailers, they pay more, right? And, GSW pays more. And so like, it's hard for us to compete. So it's a real struggle, and we're always struggling with that. And I worry about it. I do. It's a legitimate worry.
Same.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
So like, when you talk about like wide and shallow, how do you, steer the clients into the right choice? Because obviously there's a safe one, and then there's your favorites. How do you get them to choose a favorite?
Right. Well, it's super manipulative on our part, because what happens is you show them this kind of work on a continuum, right? So it's some of it's safe, and then some of it's like crazy town over here, right? They tend to stay in this area because they start to see the safe, and the crazy scares them. And so we make sure where we want to land is right in here. It's psychological, but it works. So, yeah.
You were talking earlier about how you want to put out really great work, and you even said that you can only, you're like, there's some things you're really good at, and just naturally there are other things that you're not going to be as good at. So do you find that you have to say no to something some requests, or and like how do you deal
Mhm.
with that? Is that difficult?
So when I talk about kind of leaning into what you're good at, I think of it as like an individual. And so our company is a collection of people. And I feel like our job, or my job, a handful of folks' job in our company is to be really good matchmakers. So this client with this person who's really good at this and that person who's good at that, and you put this little puzzle together and they're going to deliver for that client like nobody's business. So much of it is about making sure that that person gets to do what they're good at. So we don't say no a lot, but you know, it just sometimes it's just about allowing the people that are in the building to lean into what they're already good at. So, yeah.
This is a kind of broad question, but what advice would you give to a student who does want to start their own business?
Who does?
Yeah.
Yeah. I so want people to start their own businesses. Because my opinion of what's happening in the marketplace here, the landscape of creative companies, is that there are a bunch of really big ones, and then there's a lot of freelance kind of gig people, and there isn't enough in between. So like when Graham starts his own business, I'm like, yes, right? I think that's great. And then when we've had a couple people from Ologie start their own business, and I'm like, yes, good, hire people, make a place, make something. So I get really excited about that. And my advice would be to just get started, because that's, I mean, you are going to learn, you're going to cut your teeth in the first couple of years, and you're going to have accounting books like mine. Yeah.
You referred to some important values that I'm so curious about. What do you, like, you know, you mentioned with honesty and kindness and growth and meeting over money. And,
yep.
But about like the truth, what do you look at? Or how can you really stay truthful about the message that you want to, you know, have in your whatever content you're creating? How do you embrace or like encourage your team about like confronting the truth or expressing it?
Within each other or for clients?
For the clients, with each other, with ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for me, I don't like packaged conversations, right? So I'm always like, just talk to somebody. And I don't like conference calls. The conference calls are for presentations, but I think that it's like, pick up the phone, be face-to-face, just talk to somebody. And I don't think people do enough of that. They don't put their guard down enough. They're too buttoned up. And people just need to have a conversation and tell the truth. Like I told a client yesterday that the videos they had done last year weren't very good. And I told her why. And she's not mad at me. But it's going to be hard for us to use them in a campaign she wants to do. So I don't want to use them. So I'm going to tell her the truth now, before we ever get the project. So, yeah.
I have one last question. Do you watch every project that goes out? Are you part of every presentation so to control the quality?
I'm probably more hands-on than I should be still. And so it's probably, yes, I see probably everything. And we have something really cool called Basecamp, and so I get to get in there and look at things. And the stuff on the walls, I get to walk around the building and see everything that's going on. So it's really exciting. But I absolutely don't work on everything I can't. And we've got incredible people that just own stuff. And people want autonomy anyway, right? So, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Bev. What kind of trends do you see for creative services agencies in the time we're in right now?
So the one thing that is on my mind that I think about is that there are so many people that are freelancing, and it's easy to do, and if you look at the stats, it's going to keep happening, and I worry about our ability to have that many full-time people. So we've even moved our space around to make even more, more casual spaces and places to collaborate, because I think we're going to have to start bringing designers in contractually just to get some work done. I think it's going to be really hard to have such a big staff, because there's going to be so many people that just want to freelance. They can do it. They can make a lot of money doing that. It's fine. It just makes it hard for companies trying to make something. So, yeah.
Are you seeing any trends in like programs people should know, or like what should we learn to help create a wedge for ourselves in the industry?
Oh, like, I'm not the right person to ask about that for like software and things like that. I'm the worst. But I mean, to me, the thing that you need to create a wedge for yourself is to come up with good ideas. Decorations bother me, so conceptual thinking, people that can think conceptually and come up with ideas, that's the magic. That's where all the value is. To me, there's art and science, and that's the magic. That's the valuable part. And that's been like that forever. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you guys have a pretty strong brand, and it looks like you spend a lot of time working on it and developing it. And I'm wondering how you balance keeping your brand as Ologie relevant with all of the work that you have for your clients as well.
You would die. So we're not good at doing that. I think a couple of people have said to me, "Do we have a brand guidelines? Because that would be helpful." I think we kind of do it in sort of a guttural way every day, and we're living it every day, and we change it and evolve it. But we're always looking at it in context of everything else. So it's kind of had this gradual evolution. So it's not as all tight as you think it is.
So. Not the orange down.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think you do have a clear identity. Your corporate presence on Instagram or Twitter or on social media, as well as just the visual identity. I think there's a clear. You may not feel like you've got the solid brand guidelines now, but I think you've got a clear identity that I think does. I think it's pretty powerful because it does speak to Ologie as an entity, not just a service. Or
right. Right. Yeah. It's clear who we are, what we stand for, what's our vibe. Yeah, we get that. But we're also all judging everything all the time internally. That's not right. Don't send that out. That needs to shift. That doesn't feel like Ologie. That's not Ologie-like. We do that all the time. So, yeah, let me see.
How do you test your products? Like when you do these campaigns for different schools or even the prospective students, future students, do you test it with a test audience? Like where they test food and say here.
Right. So we used to be super against that because they don't know what they want. But in fact, especially in education, it happens a lot. It doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot. So we'll do we'll do surveys to 2,000 alums and to try to see if there's going to be a giant backlash, when this new brand comes out, because Facebook and Twitter is a powerful thing. So we always do testing. And guess what? That's really good for Board of Trustees. They need to see that because that's their insurance policy. Yeah. Yeah. You just hope that the testing doesn't blow the work up. Right. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you.